All right, and welcome back, everybody, to A Dash of Reading. I'm your host, Dash. I've got my co-host, Amber. I've got level-headed Dana. Before we get started, how is everyone doing tonight?
Good. Yeah. It's no longer so cold outside that the air hurts your face, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting some more of that this weekend, so I think.
I'm sorry.
Sleet, rain, ice, snow.
It's going to be like in the
It just all depends on. I have to figure out which if Mike Morgan's wearing his Channel 4 tie, it's probably going to have some ice. If Damon Lane rips off his jacket, we're in for some nasty weather. And then if David Payne says go get your grandma out of the casino, we're probably having some bad weather. So if one of those three do that, we're having some bad.
All right.
You do know that David Payne his mom was a geometry teacher at Choctaw, right?
I know there was a Mrs. Payne, but I didn't know that her son is a meteorologist. I didn't have her.
Yep, that's her son.
That's how you know you're from a small town.
We're from a suburb of the suburbs of Oklahoma City.
Yep. Yeah, this kind of thing that happens in Fluvanna too. You talk,
which might be taking over for the
yeah. What?
Choctaw's bigger than Midwest City and Del City now.
Yeah, that's terrible. I hate when little towns get big.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, enough of our small talk. We are here to talk about George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, the first installation of that saga. We're going to be talking about
you can't see, but I have
Game of Thrones.
I have a lot of notes. Can you not hear me? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
Okay. There's a delay, I think.
Yeah, I think
so. There's a little bit of a delay. All right, well, let's get our first thoughts. We'll start, since Amber has the entire Encyclopedia Britannica of notes in her phone. We will start with you, Miss Dana, and then we'll let Amber go with that. So let's get your first initial opening thoughts of A Game of Thrones.
It was not what I anticipated. So I think I had listened to and read things about the the movie or the series or whatever, and thought, ew, I could never, and I still don't think I can watch it. I think it's a no-go for me to watch it ever. But when I read it, I was like, okay, there's some stuff, but it wasn't near as much as I had anticipated. And of course, I've only read the first book. Right. So, if there are people out there going, have you read blah, blah, blah? No, I haven't. I've only read the first book. But so it wasn't near as graphic and as, I guess graphic is the best word, as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think in the show, George took a lot more liberty of what he wanted than what he could do in the book. So there was definitely a lot more liberties and whatnot for the show. But yeah, that's pretty much what the consensus is, I think, though, as far as people that have talked, at least until we get to Amber Lannister up here, and then.
Well, and for me, there is a huge difference in reading something and seeing something. Like if I see it, it's like it's in there, and I can't dig it out. But I can read it, and I mean, one thing I struggle with in my reading life is I have a hard time picturing what I'm reading, which can be a good thing in cases like this. Yeah, it can be a good thing. So, yeah, I mean, I have a few pictures from this book in my head just from the reading, but not actually. So, The average book, I have to really concentrate on picturing the stuff in my head. My brain just doesn't do that. So
Yeah. What say you, Amber? What is your opening thoughts? Then we'll delve deeper into
my opening thought is it was exactly how I thought it was going to be. But I've seen most of season 1. So I've seen most of season 1. I don't think we finished it. Eric will know. So I knew going into it that it was basically just your typical medieval story with everybody wanting to be in power. So, I knew it was going to be that. So there was no surprises there.
All right. Well, we're going to get into that, but it's almost recap time, and we'll let Amber go into that. But just to give a little stuff, this was definitely based on the War of the Roses. This is just a more I'm sure the War of the Roses was violent and everything, but I think this was just a more up tempo. I don't know if that's what the word I'm looking for. Definitely he brought, he took some liberties on the War of the Roses, but you can see that it followed the War of the Roses tale and leading up into the Tudors and things of that nature. So especially with the Starks and the Lannisters being so close to the names of the war, that were the main participants in the War of the Roses. Lancasters.
Oh.
And
I don't remember the other one.
Yeah, but obviously the Lannisters are the Lancasters for sure, 100%. Well, we just got our opening thoughts done, but as always, we'll bring it back and we'll do our recap, and we'll get Miss Amber to take care of that as soon as I find my awesome.
Before you do that, were you thinking House of York?
York.
York. York.
Yeah.
Yeah. York. God,
See? Got my. Go ahead.
I don't know why I did that. I was listening and it started on its own. All right, let's get our recap in. We're having a slow day.
So does this need to be recapped for anyone? Is there anyone watching that is not familiar with what Game of Thrones is about? So you have these main 2 houses. You have the Starks and the Lannisters. And then you have, okay, listen, I'm going to butcher the names. I listened on audio. I think the show probably said something different. I Googled, and George R.R. Martin says he doesn't care. Pronounce it how you want. The Targaryens are another family, like outliers, I feel like. But Dash is right. It's like a York Lancaster thing from a long time ago. And that's it. So the book itself was laid out from the viewpoints of 6 or 7 different people from each of the houses, mostly from Stark House, a Lannister, and a Targaryen. Whatever her, Daenerys, and then Tyrion, and then the rest were from Stark. Is that right? Yeah. So anyway, it's literally a Game of Thrones. It's like a chess game. You're reading a chess game, and these people are vying for power, like every other story in the medieval times. And that's really it. I mean, that's really it really is that simple. There's a lot of intricate moving parts within the novel, but I feel like that's the simple explanation of what is happening. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, I know you got your notes, but let me ask you this. Obviously, right from the beginning, there's an omen that we get of what is, and I want to know if you caught it. There's an omen right from the get-go of how this is going to end for a couple of people. What is I'll just throw this out there. What is the sigil, the symbol for the House of Stark?
I don't know.
Is it the wolf?
The wolf. It is the dire
white wolf.
What is the what is the symbol for House Baratheon?
Don't remember.
Stag. The deer, the stag, or the deer.
Right.
So when they have just completed, executing the traitor that left, that had, or not traitor, but the deserter, if you will, which he wasn't really a deserter. He was just coming to tell them that the White Walkers are coming. But anyways, when they find the 5 direwolves, when they find the pup direwolves, what is sticking into the direwolf's throat?
Oh, yeah.
I read this 2 months ago.
It's the antler from the stag.
There was an omen of how this was going to play out right from the beginning. If you didn't catch it, I like little. So that's what I like. Because we talked with, and I talked with Amber about this a long time ago, how I was comparing Tolkien and Martin as far as the way they write and how they bring to the fantasy world, and both of them had always foreshadowed, if you will, I feel like in many different ways. And I feel like Martin is a very good at foreshadowing, and that was definitely one of the very first ones that we pick up on. So go ahead, Amber. Did you have anything as far as what you liked about we'll talk about the first half before we go into King's Landing and everything. We'll talk more about Winterfell and everything. What stuck out to you that you liked the most about the first part of the book?
So you're going to have to ask specific questions. I know I asked 2 months to read this, but I did finish this like New Year's Eve. So it's been a long time, and I've read 12 books since then. Okay. So I'm going to have to dig deep. So I don't know what the first half.
So we're just in Winterfell, and let's talk about just the king arriving and coming to ask Ned to become the king, the hand of the king.
And they get the pups, and there's the whole thing with John, like what's going to happen.
I have a paragraph right here that says, it took 300 pages for me to get a grasp of what was happening. Robert is on the Iron Throne. Cersei feels threatened by Ned. Let the games begin. So that's all I got for the first half. Like I said, I saw the first season, right? So I had an understanding. I know Bran got pushed out the window. Bran got pushed out the window? Bran? The little kid who got pushed out the window.
Yep, Bran. Yes.
It was Bran, right? And so I had that basic knowledge, but it took 300 pages before I even figured out what exactly was going on. There's way too many characters, and I don't normally have a problem with that. I really don't. I'm a smart girl, but it was just so much, and I was so confused, and I was frustrated. And still about 300 pages, and I already took the book to the thrift store. Look, see, there, see,
4 pages of characters.
I don't know what happened at around page 300 where I went, oh God, okay, I'm tracking.
Yes. No, there were a lot. There's a lot coming at you really fast.
Yes.
And so I'm going to listen
to. This is who we're moving. We're doing this, and I can't keep up.
Yes. So I've listened to it twice now, and the first time through was exactly my experience. I was like, I have no idea what has happened. For hours of listening, I'm like, what? Where are we? And then when I listened to it again, at that point, I wasn't struggling with the characters so much, and I printed out this list, which actually has little helpful descriptions too.
Good.
And so the second time through, I tracked much better. Like I actually remember the story much better. Okay. So there is just a lot.
The first time the first time I read it, I was like you. This has been out for many moons. So this reading for today's show, this is like my 10th or 11th reading of Game of Thrones. So, So, at first you're just like there's just so much to overcome, especially if you don't have any history of any of the medieval times, any of the the dynasties that ruled in England. You're going to have a hard time, if you don't understand what the Tudors are, who the Tudors or so on and so forth, that you're going to have a hard time with understanding the way he writes, I think, at the beginning. Not saying you per se. I'm just talking a brand new into.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just talking.
I know.
I'm just talking that some people will have a hard time grasping how he's worked these families out.
And I think I've called BS on this every time it gets brought up that you should have prior knowledge of something before you read a novel. Because I think that's silly. Because I'm a smart I know about the Tudors and all of that. I read a lot of stuff, and this book was hard.
I'm not saying you have knowledge, because you do have knowledge of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it is hard for. I'm just saying, if you haven't had any dealings with anything, I think it's a little bit difficult to understand. I'm not, and that was even for me, and I had not. I had studied, ancient Europe, ancient. So yeah. But even I had a hard time the first time. I'm just saying, if you don't have any, I'm not saying you have to be 100% knowledgeable, but I think it helps to understand how these houses are built and why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, and I think it helps to have read, I don't know if I'm going to say this because I'm not sure what else to say, but I think it helps to have read some fantasy. Like if you've read some Tolkien, if you've read some of that kind of stuff, then it might be a little easier to catch on. Like if this is your first rodeo with that kind of world, then you might be a little bit behind the 8 ball and having to sort of just get your brain into, okay, we're in a familiar world, but we're not. I mean, the Middle Ages are so removed that yes, it's the same world that we live in now, but that was a really different time and place. So we would all struggle if we just somehow magically got dropped in the Middle Ages. I'm sure the 3 of us would be pedaling hard, just trying to stay on feet. So I don't
disagree with that. I don't disagree with that.
Let's talk about this being a fantasy novel a little bit, because the only thing about this novel that is fantasy are the dragons at the very end. Right. I don't think this is a fantasy. And now I know that I have not read the others. I'm only reviewing book 1. It is a fantasy because of the dragons, and that's the only thing. Other than that, this is just like a historical fiction. You could literally have said this is England, and other than
England
changing some of the spellings on some of the names, it's not a high fantasy at all. It is not. It's like a low fantasy novel. It's just I think if you're not familiar with big thick books like epics, I think you would struggle for sure.
Epic. Maybe that's because fantasy didn't feel right. So epic feels better. That feels like a much better choice.
Yeah.
And that was part of my surprise with the book too, is that I expected a lot more of the fantastical elements. And it was only in reading about the Targaryens, right? I'm looking at my list, the girl who goes off and marries the horse lord guy.
Danny.
Yeah. That's the section that you go like, oh, okay. Now I'm seeing those elements, but the other parts not so much. I mean, you have some kind of witchcraft things going on.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not.
Yeah. So.
I wholeheartly agree with you on the fantasy element, except for one thing, and that is the White Walkers, and because that starts out it literally starts out with them. So that's that's more of a supernatural fantasy element, the dead rising. So, but I do agree that there's not a whole, other than them keep saying like the Grumpkins, he throws in some weird names like that. But yeah, you're definitely right. I feel like this is more historical fiction without it being historical, if that makes sense. He does have literally, like we said, he definitely took. Like we said, he definitely took to War of the Roses, changed the names, changed the location, and made it his own. But yeah, I agree 100%. It's even on the back of the books, I had to disagree with this right away, and it was maybe as it goes on, but we're talking about the San Diego Tribune goes high fantasy with a vengeance, and I'm like, yes, it's fantasy.
Whoa.
But I would never even call it high fantasy. Just the dragons don't even make it high fantasy. You have to have the fae and other things. At least that's Dash's opinion. It sounds like it's your opinion as well. Definitely. So yeah, I disagree with the high fantasy as well. So, but I do appreciate I do appreciate the words how he writes and brings us into this world, because I feel like I feel like that's what, you don't always have to have Tolkien, and that's kind of what I broke down in my comparison. You don't always have to have Tolkien, but you can see the Tolkien, uh, influence
Mhm.
in
And
the
the man
world
can write a
building.
character now. Oh my goodness. Like the characters are just, they come off the page at you like they're real
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
Like Jon Snow, I
Yeah.
feel like I could have tea with him and we could talk.
You definitely hate, even if you had never seen the show, you would hate Joffrey Baratheon, and you would hate Cersei,
Yeah. Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Oh,
and you would
Cersei's
know that
horrible.
Sansa is a naive young kid, and Arya is
Go Arya.
strong-willed, but strong-willed, bullheaded. But yeah, so I agree with you. Yeah, the character, he knows how to write a character.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and I see this as a complaint a lot. It's the ages of the children. And this is fiction, and this is where I have to kind of put a kibosh on things, but I want to get your take on it. Does the ages of the children, Danny, for example, Sansa and Joffrey, and even to an extent John, do the ages bother you of when they're of the such adult themes that we're talking about? Does that bother you at all, Amber? What do you think on that?
Yes, and it's one of the reasons it will affect my rating. I am well aware in historical times that we were marrying off 13-year-old little girls for power. That I got you. Write that in there. Sansa being married, whatever, right? I had a really big problem with the explicit sex scenes with Danny, and her being 13, 14 years old. Only because I think it's immoral. I think he could have faded to black their wedding night. But George Martin is a grown man, and on the other side of the keyboard was picturing a sex scene involving a 13-year-old little girl, and I almost stopped reading. It's disgusting.
I can understand that.
Again, he could have alluded to it and faded to black, but I think because I tag teamed reading and listening like I do most books these days. And I got stuck listening to that scene on audio, and I was disgusted. Thoroughly disgusted.
Yeah.
So this is the part I hate the most. I would say Danny's story to me is the worst storyline. This is the only time I'm angry is when I'm reading about Danny and just all the other things that happen with the women that she's trying to save. And it just went all through me.
No, I totally understand. And that's exactly, that is one of the biggest, if you go around and look at a lot of the negative reviews and negative topics about this storyline or these books itself, it is the that storyline. It is the age, and obviously something that they quickly remedied for the TV show. So,
did they? How did they
especially
change
with Danny
that?
and her age?
She's older.
Okay.
Older.
They made her old. She's way older, still naive, still new to the world, if you will, because they've been hidden for so long.
Right.
But they did remedy the age. And again, I understand where you're coming from on the other side of on the typing. I get that, but again, I will say that it is fiction. It is, but it also does reflect times. Not that we're saying we can, ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there listening, we're not saying we condone this in any way, shape, or form. I just reiterate that this was the time frame. So he was trying to. I think, again, I won't say it's fact. I just say I think he was trying to portray what the real world was like, or that world was like with that. So I agree. I think that's probably it doesn't affect my ranking now because I understand, but I was at the beginning when my first couple times through this reading, I was like, yeah, that's a little over top. But Dane, let me get your thoughts on it. What I mean, same feeling.
Yeah. Well, the whole story about Danny is disturbing. Even if she's 17, the story is disturbing about her. Just because her brother is so horrible, and she's so well. All of the women in that storyline are really, yeah. I mean, they're just abused and powerless, is what it boils down to. And so that's a difficult storyline to read. The Stark kids' ages didn't bother me a bit. That all just made sense to me. I was like, yeah, okay, right, yep, check, check, check. This all tracks. I mean, yeah, Arya's young and she's out there learning to sword fight, but even that made sense given the position she was in and given the culture and everything. So, so yeah, I think yes, it is disturbing, Danny's age, but it's disturbing anyway. Like that storyline is, yeah.
I definitely think that was what he wanted us to feel, if that makes any sense, because
Oh yeah,
this is a theory. This is a theory because I'm going off of what the books are, and then I'm going off what the television, because the television show kind of deviates a lot of times. So we don't even know what the real ending to the TV show gave us an ending. We don't know what the books will give us, because he's, we'll probably never get the ending per se. If he ever finishes Winds of Winter, I will call myself president and be happy with it. But so that's how close we'll be to ever getting Winds of Winter. But this is a theory. Again, I've said this on a few things on shorts. I've boasted about this many times. I feel like this book this story has always been about Bran, because he's the very first character we open up to, and at the point of view of everything. And I do feel like that he wants us to feel for Danny. He wants us to get close to Danny. And spoilers, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't read or never seen this, you might want to turn this off. But I feel like he wants us to get close to Danny, so when she does do the switch and become this evil thing, that it'll hurt more, or it'll affect us more. That's a theory. I can't say what's going to happen because we haven't gotten to the end of the book.
And I do definitely feel for her, and I don't dislike her husband, weirdly enough. I mean, he seemed to be, I mean, it was written so that I took it to be he was a product of his culture, and he was a good man within that culture. And never mind, they took this kid for a wife, but he wasn't doing anything bad in his culture.
He loved her.
What's that?
Yeah, Khal Drogo loved her. He actually
did.
Yeah, he actually had affection for her.
And she loved him before it was all said and done.
Yes. So I just want to reiterate that I don't mind she's 13 getting married, because yes.
No, we know that. We know that.
He did not have to have explicit scenes.
No, he didn't.
With her.
You're right.
And that was disgusting. So
I agree.
I agree with you 100%.
Right, I agree. And
I'm right there with you. But
and it continued to be hard. Like her storyline was it was gripping, and I couldn't stop reading it. But it was a hard read, because on every page I was like, "What's going to happen to this poor girl now? Like, what jerk guy is going to roll up and do something stupid?" Like, and it just kept happening. And then they're trying to poison her. I mean, it just went on and on and on. So there was a part of me that when, towards the end of the book, when she's like coming into her own, I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think that's why I'll pick on him till we finally get Winds of Winter, but he is a wonderful writer. He knows how to get us involved with each and every character and each and every storyline. And though, you talked about it earlier about the, it not being so graphic in the book, I still feel like he comes, you get the message without, without the graphic. And of course he could pull off a little bit more bloodshed in the movie, which is, it's a lot easier to do in the movie, but.
So how involved was he with the making of the show?
What?
Oh, was
he? He was on, he's the on scene, he probably helped them write the scripts. I'm pretty sure, but he was definitely, he's like J.K. Rowling. So J.K. Rowling will have, how she's going to be for this new TV show comes out. She has say so in hiring, firing, who's getting cast. She has almost the final say in everything. And I feel like George probably had this, the same credit for him. So
whatever ending they came
because
up
I know
with,
he was
must have been okay with it.
Well,
Hey, we
he
should
said that
spoil
at the time.
You should spoil it because Dana Aniston binged the show recently.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
after I read book 1, I called Aniston. I'm like, and so now tell me how the show goes. And so she
Right.
went through the whole thing. So
Mhm.
Dash, you should tell Dana how they end the show.
I'm fine with knowing.
I am not. I'm not one of those ones that had a problem with the last season. There's a lot there now. This definitely has the fandom divided. Was it rushed? Absolutely. Did it disappoint me? No, because again, I've always felt this is about Bran.
Mm.
So he didn't get the throne, though, right?
If you watch the show, you know that Bran sits the iron. Bran sits the Iron Throne.
Oh,
Yeah, Bran sits the throne. John. It was going to be John, and we'll talk about John here in just a second. Everybody in the world wanted John. Well, they wanted Daenerys until she turned her back and she became this heartless ruler. She basically started taking on the Targaryen traits of
she burned it all down,
becoming crazy, becoming and she burned it all down. So John, everybody wanted John, and John's like, no, because we'll talk about John. But Bran did end up sitting on the throne, on the Iron Throne. So that's why I say, even before I watched the show, when I read it, I've always felt that Bran was who we were going to get, just because again, we opened up with him, and I feel like most writers, when we open the character they open up with, is usually your main star. Now that could be wrong, and when we get Winds of Winter, he could slap me in the face and tell me I'm wrong, and Danny may end up sitting it. I don't know, because it could be a Targaryen, but I always felt like the Starks were his main characters, always. So let's talk about John. So let me ask you this: do you even know who started this whole thing? Do you know who the two main players that started the basically this war and the Game of Thrones? So I want to get your guess first, Amber. Who do you think started this?
Cersei Lannister. She's terrible. It's all her fault.
Mm-mm.
She's a pot stirrer, that's for sure.
Again, it took me 300 pages to figure out what was going on. So if there were clues at the beginning, I don't know.
Okay.
Although Tyrion,
Let me get you.
I don't know either, but I am thinking that Tyrion Lannister, he comes across as funny, but he's playing everybody and sort of in it for himself. So I wouldn't put it past him to have started something.
I will just say Tyrion is not the person that we think he is, and Tyrion is not the same person that he is in the show.
Oh,
so I will say that. Lysa, Aaron,
the sister,
the sister,
and
knew it was a woman.
Sister and Littlefinger, because
Littlefinger
or Peter. Littlefinger and Lysa are the ones that started this all, because Lysa, and there's a part. That's why I say it took me, again, it takes me, like, this is my 11th read, or, about my 8th or 9th read. I was like, I started putting things together finally. Even after watching the show, I started putting things together. But there's a part in there where Caitlin starts talking, and Littlefinger kissed her. And she tells her sister, he gave me tongue and I didn't like it. And Lysa goes, but I loved it. And so she never wanted to be married to Jon Arryn. She only married Jon Arryn to get the Aerie and the veil. But she was always in love with Littlefinger. And so, Littlefinger was always.
Go ahead. And
her Littlefinger didn't love her. Yeah, Littlefinger didn't love her. He loved Kat. But that's what started it all. So Littlefinger poisoned Jon Arryn for her because he was trying to get the veil, because he knew he wasn't going to get the throne. So he was trying to, because he's from the Vale, so he was trying to get the veil all along. And this just set off you know, the dominoes effect here, and then we get Cersei and Jamie doing what they're doing, where Bran sees it, then that kicks off a whole nother thing, and that just continues on. And of course, we saw how Robert was with Cersei, anyways. What we we see we see Robert Baratheon one way, but we see how he really is with Cersei, even though we know that Cersei's not the greatest of character. He beats her, and so she's tired of it too. So what's somebody to do? But go ahead, Dana.
Oh, I was just going to say Lysa's another character that her relationship with her son, every time the two of them were on the page, I was like, oh, gosh.
Oh, cringe.
I mean,
Yeah, very cringe.
awful. Just awful. Mommy, make him fly. Oh.
Make the bad man fly.
Awful.
All right, Amber, what do you, so give us some of your dislikes though. So we'll get into some likes. You said you have lots of notes. I'd like to hear.
Exactly. I think that it's a depressing novel. I don't think it's nihilistic because they do go and they pray. They have a place where they pray, and so to me that's always hope, a sign of hope. People that go to worship or pray. I do think it's very depressing. There's not hardly any moments of levity. I just felt very heavy the whole time I read it. So I didn't like that. There's just despair, and there's violence, and there's hate everywhere. And poor little Tyrion telling the story of when he got married, and his dad is terrible, and it just was, and then Dany's story, and I just did not like that part of the novel. That it was just, it's a very hateful novel.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think that's what it was like in medieval times? Do you think it was hopeful?
Well, no, but I should not have to have a degree in medieval times to read a dang book. So, like that.
No, this is just a gee whiz question. Just asking.
No, but some novels have moments of levity, and I think even if I remember the show, Tyrion is can be comical, and he can say some funny things.
That's why I say in the novels and the show, Tyrion is different in the show, and I think you're right. I think you nailed it perfectly. Tyrion is, for lack of better, I think he's Jiminy Cricket, and I don't mean that because he's small. I mean that because he's everybody's conscience. I believe, like he is and levity is a great word. He is the grounded character.
I mean,
there
were things he said even in the novel that were snarky funny.
Yes.
Like the times that I was chuckling was usually when he was talking. Because he was very sort of just sort of he was sort of poking fun at himself, but also at other people at the same time. And so there were moments there, but it wasn't like a joyful funny. It was more of a, gee, if we don't laugh, we're going to cry kind of funny. So I agree with you on that.
Not much joy. And so I just felt like it was very heavy. And that was the overall tone of the novel, was very heavy. And I didn't like that.
I did.
So
I did like his interaction with Jon. I know it might have come across crass. And for some people, it might have come across crass. But I feel like him and Jon could be, in lack of better terms, probably good friends had other things gone differently. And obviously, like I said, he laid it out, and that's what I appreciate about Tyrion. But again, I've read all the books, so things are going to change for a lot of characters that don't change. Again, I don't want to. I'm trying to. If you guys ever watch it, I don't want to ruin too much for you. So is there any thing that you did like as far, we're going to get to King's Landing and death of King Baratheon here in a minute, but is there anything that you liked about the beginning? You said I know it took you a long time, but are there things that you connected with them?
when I was most interested and when I was most engaged was when it was Jon Snow's storyline. I think that's the storyline I enjoyed the most, and I looked forward to getting back around. I do think that Ned Stark is a fantastic character. He has integrity. Really, he's just a really great guy, and I feel like he's out of all of them, he's the greatest guy, and then Jon Snow. But Jon Snow, but I knew Ned was going to die because I saw I saw the first season, right. So I didn't get too attached to Ned because I knew he was leaving soon. But Jon's story I thought was very interesting, and I was always ready to read his section. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Dana?
Yeah, same. And I actually enjoyed just getting to know that family in the first part of the book, just seeing the interaction between the sibling, the young kids, and it definitely between their dad and their mom seemed like a little more of a cold fish and distant, especially from Jon. I mean, she just flat out didn't want Jon around for very understandable reasons. I get it. That wasn't Jon's fault though. So that's part of what goes into making us, invest in him as a character too, is that we do feel sorry for him and we feel like he's kind of gotten a bad rap. And we understand why there's not really many options for him, but it doesn't seem fair. So I'm all in on his story because of that. So why? What do you?
Let me ask you this. There's a moment when Ned and Jon split up. Ned is going to King's Landing. Jon is heading off with Uncle Benjen to the wall. And Ned says to Jon, he goes, "I will tell you the truth about your mother when next we meet." Right. So let me ask you this. Is Jon really Ned's bastard?
Do we find that out?
Were there not descriptions of him that matched?
That just said that he does take on the traits of a Stark.
Yeah,
it's never
a Stark.
Explicitly of a Stark. It's never explicitly said that it was Ned's. Again, if you want me to spoil, I will spoil it. Jon is.
I think based on this book, I don't think there's enough information for that.
There's not, but Jon is definitely. Well, there's a lot of hints to it. There's hints throughout the book. You just have to.
Is it his brother's child?
But again, it is his sister. It was Robert Baratheon, and he was. Robert Baratheon was in love with Ned's sister.
Right.
He goes down to it was her son. Jon is because if you kind of really look at Ned and you look at Bran and you look at Robb and all them, they're auburnish hair for the most part. Jon is the only one that has jet black hair. Jon has the hair of Robert Baratheon. And again, I didn't catch it. Again, it took me like 7 readings to, and this again, I knew it from the TV show, but I'm talking about me going into the books and really discovering the hints that were laid out. Because again, and of course, because even Robert and Ned are talking about it. He goes, "Who was that woman?" And Jon or Ned just kind of blows him off. He's like, and they end up talking about Dany and what's going on over in in Dothraki and all that.
Yeah, because it's just coming back to me from this read. There were all these like little tidbits about this woman that Robert had loved in the past but didn't marry. Right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Right. So Robert was in love with Robert was in love with Ned's sister.
It was her child. Yeah.
So you see, well, you'll as you go on, the hints drop more. When you go into Clash of Kings, you go into Feast of Crows, and all the other books, you'll start to see lots of pieces going together. I kind of doing this because I know Amber said she'll never read another Game of Thrones book, so I at least want to get a little bit of the story out. But so we go to King's Landing. Let me ask you this: what do you think Ned should have done differently in King's Landing, Amber?
Oh, he should have removed Cersei from there, the place. Right? He never like made her leave. They advised him to do that, right? When he was the hand and her husband died or whatever, he was advised to have Cersei leave, and he never did. And I think that was his mistake.
All right, Dana, what do you think?
Yeah, probably that. I mean, everybody around him wanted him to compromise and play the game, and he refused to do it. And I cheered for him every time. I didn't want him to compromise. I wanted him to stay true to himself, and I knew it was going to get him killed.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no way he was coming out of that alive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even knowing that, I was like, "Stay strong, brother."
Yeah, the
So-
honor. Yeah, the honor is too much to give up for him, and that's what I
Yeah.
loved about Ned.
Yeah, and you don't want him to give it up, because if he gave it up, he wouldn't be the character you thought he was. I mean, I would have been. I think I might have stopped reading if he had caved. I might have been like, I'm not interested in reading this anymore, because the one good guy didn't hold. And that's, Amber, to your point about this is not a nihilistic book. There are characters who believe in the good and the right, and they stick to their guns, even knowing it's not going to work out. They do it anyway, just because it's the right thing to do. And that makes it, in a way, it's a hopeful book in that sense, that that just honor for the sake of honor is not a bad thing. So,
and then that kind of feeds into where this is just like a depressing book, because Martin does not reward that behavior.
right.
He is not rewarding good behavior.
Yeah.
For the most part. So then I'm like, but yeah.
Although he does in the case of John, when John is like, I'm out of here. I'm going
he
home.
is back. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes back and he makes the turn and he decides, okay, if I'm here, I'm going to make the best of this, and I'm going to be the best at this that I can be. I'm going to do this thing right. And so you still, I in the book with great hope in John that he's going to be the man of honor and continue to do that.
John definitely takes on Ned's traits. He may not be his son, and for real, but John takes on everything that is good about Ned. Everything. It follows in his footsteps. And you're right. When you first read this book, if you hadn't watched the show or you knew what was going to happen, the Ned dying is one of the very first times I've ever seen a main character, because this was written 96, so we hadn't even had shows like Walking Dead or things of that nature that give us characters that we get attached to that are bam, just like that. This was the very first time I feel like where, other than Neverending Story and Artex, but where you're endeared to a character, and Martin just sweeps the rug right out. And you're right, he doesn't reward. And I feel like that could be real. I mean, that's what I feel like is real life about it. We could be the most honest and good-hearted working man that we can, and sometimes we don't get rewarded for that. Sometimes it is the evil man, the evil backstabber that gets. And I think that's what I really appreciate about his storytelling is there's a lot of real life in the way he writes those characters. Again, that's the way the War of the Roses was. Whether we don't know who. I mean, we really don't know who the good guys and the bad guys are in War of the Roses. We think we do because it's written by the victors, but we really don't know who the good guys and bad guys were. We really don't know who the good guys and the bad guys are in this. We know that Ned is really good, and we know that John is really good. But if you look at some of the character traits of a lot of them, they are gray. They are gray area. Go ahead, Amber.
I was thinking about the characters that Martin chose to do the POVs, and I think you can say that all of those characters, I would put them as a good character. They're flawed humans. They're not perfect, But I think all of the point of views that we get are not from the bad guys, in my opinion. And I've only read this one, and I don't really know anything.
That's a very good opinion.
Yeah. So it's
That's a very good opinion, but I see where you're coming from too.
It's Bran, it's Sansa, it's
Danny,
it's Tyrion, it's Jon, and then it's the little assassin. What's her name? Anya. Arya. She becomes an assassin, Dana.
Go Arya.
I know. So I think all of those are really good guys. Like they can be I think they're the good guys in this Game of Thrones. He didn't give us Cersei. He's not giving us Lisa or Liza or whatever her name is. I think he's doing the POVs of the good guys.
So that might say something that, they're it's their voices we're hearing.
Right.
At least in the first book.
Which is all I'm reviewing, Dash.
That's a very good point. Yeah, and at least I know. I'm just saying.
I know it's hard for you because you know it so well. I can.
That's
see
a very good point, and
it's hard for you to break out of that. I understand. It makes sense.
No.
Yeah.
I like where you're coming from because everything that you guys are saying is how I felt, is exactly how I felt when the first couple times that I read it. So there's no difference, and it makes me chuckle a little bit that you guys are, as much as you and I disagree on things, that we finally kind of had that common ground with this book, because I felt the same way, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. Again, I am trying to break out of what I know so I can give you that, but I don't disagree with anything either of you said, because I think you guys are both spot on from the initial review and discussion. So that's perfect. It makes doing this show for Game of Thrones specifically a little bit better to me, because we are kind of on common ground for once.
Because I don't know if I could just do a review on like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I have read that entire series a times. Do you know what I mean? It would be hard for me just to focus on just the first one. So I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's say if you've read the Ring trilogy, you can't just do the Fellowship of the Ring. Because you can't put the other books out of your head, and there's so much. Loose ends. You know how they get tied up and stuff. Yeah. Which is why I immediately called Aniston, and I'm like, okay, tell me the whole show, because I'm not reading any more of these. And so we spent like an hour, and she just like told me everything. I asked her, okay, what about this person, and then what happened to that?
So did she like it overall?
She did.
Did she like it overall? Did she have?
Yeah. Aniston liked the show. I don't think she liked how it ended. She's 20, so she loves her some Jon Snow. I asked her if she was going to watch House of Dragons, and she goes, "No, Jon Snow's not in it. Why would I do that?" But she liked it, Dash. Yes.
Oh, she needs to. If she needs to, it's excellent. Yeah, it's to answer your question, Dana. There's 5 books right now, and we're waiting on the 6th book, which is Winds of Winter. So there's 5 total right now.
Is 6 supposed to be the last?
So we don't. I mean, we know how it ends in the show. We don't know. I mean, he's
11 years.
We can't get him to
since book 5.
No, we can't get him to say anything.
Dash says it's because
he's been writing. He's been writing book 6 for quite some time.
Wow.
He is. I mean, we're getting Dunk and Egg show now. We're going to get another season of House of the Dragon, which the Song of Blood and Fire, or the Blood and Fire book, it is all about the Targaryen history. If you don't want to go read those, I do, request that you read that, because it does give you a lot of background on the Targaryens and what leads up to the Game of Thrones. So that's and you'll see that from the show and I think they did really well with their casting in House of the Dragon, because I love Matt Smith. I think he's fantastic and he's doing a wonderful job. So, but all of them have been perfectly cast in that, in my opinion. Even in Game of Thrones, I think they did a wonderful job with the cast on that, because Kit Harington is Jon Snow. When you read, you see Kit Harington as Jon Snow. So I think they did fantastic on that. But yeah, he's so busy with that. He's busy with executive producing other shows on Max, I think, and comic books. I mean, he's got his hands in a lot of things. You know, we'll get an update. I'm really close to being finished, and that was like 8-9 years ago, and then 2 years ago we get I'm really close to being finished, and so we don't know. But
so I watched a YouTube video with him, and I looked up how to pronounce the character names, and it's the video that he said just whatever, but he said that when he creates a character, he has to name them right away. Like he can't move on until Ned Stark has a name. He can't. So somebody in the comments on YouTube goes, "This is why we don't have the next book. You can't come up with a name." It was so funny. So funny.
I mean, that would probably be the number one reason why. That makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah, I totally get where he's coming from, but for all his faults, he still has brought us one of the greatest, at least in my opinion, one of the greatest sagas and epics, as you pointed out. I think epic is a fantastic word for what this story is, and it's no different than the Iliad or the Odyssey. It's just a different. It's not in iambic pentameter. It's in prose. So.
Regardless of what you think there,
which I probably didn't.
Regardless of what you think of this story, I don't think anybody can say the man can't write. I mean, holy cow, right? He builds a world. He creates these characters that you care about from the minute they show up on the page, or that you hate the minute they walk into the room, one or the other. And like what a talent. Amazing.
It's kind of like Amber brought up. I mean, I asked that question the other day. What's an actor that they did so good at their role that you hated them for a while? And Amber's like, oh, they're just an actor. You can't hate them. No, I did. I hated the actor of Joffrey Baratheon. Hated him because he played him so well. That's a good thing. I don't like really hate him, but you understand where I'm going for. I couldn't forgive him for a while because he did such a good job at how George R. R. Martin wrote him. And Cersei, you have you love to hate her because she does a good job. And I think you're right. I think every character in there, you could. This is one book you cannot say that the characters are flat and one-dimensional. They're very three-dimensional. They're very alive.
Even the I don't like this term, but the throwaway characters, like I don't remember her name, but remember when Bran, it's after he started to recover and they've built his special saddle and everything, and he can ride a horse, and he goes out and his brother goes off into the woods for something, and I don't remember what now, and Bran is Osha. Yeah. So the woman who comes back, but like basically she now lives there, and so she's kind of a throwaway character, but even she, like immediately she's a full character and you care what happens.
She will have a very large arc coming very soon. Osha will have a very large part, and that's why it's hard for me to say. It's hard to again, I liken it to Walking Dead. You may think somebody is a throwaway character, but that main character dies, and then that person that you thought was a throwaway character is thrust into the spotlight. And that's what I appreciate about, we might love some of these characters and then they get whacked, and now you got to go, oh man, who am I going to next? Wow. That's what I love. Even in Danny's story, Jorah Mormont, you got, he is a very faulty character, but I think you get endeared to him because he still holds a knight's honor. He may have done some, he may have sold off some poachers as slavery, which Ned looked down upon, understandably, but he sold them off to get food for his family and things like that. So Jorah has knightly honor. And I think that's why you can get endeared to him. And you again, if you were to go through the entire story, Jorah might become one of the most favorite characters that you love, because he's very Danny's knight, right? He's the knight. Yeah, he's Danny's knight. Yeah, Danny's knight.
Yeah. No, I loved him because I mean, he was loyal to her. I mean, he was right there to the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, he is her voice of reason, because again, we know that Dany is very naive because she hasn't been in the world, and she's thrust into the Dothraki lifestyle, and then that goes all to crap, and then she's thrust into another. So yeah, he is her voice of reason, and again, he becomes one of the greatest, at least to me, one of the greatest characters. And if you do eventually, I'll never say don't, but if you do eventually read on, and you finally do read on, there's lots of great characters that you will, that haven't made an entry yet, that you will enjoy. And there's some that you're going to hate even more than some of the ones that you hate now. So that's what I love about it. Anything else, Miss Amber?
What?
I know you got notes upon notes.
The only thing I have left is really nothing. The writing, his character writing is very good. The story overall, like the game itself, is interesting. And I think he did a really good job. I don't think this is anything special. This is your typical take on medieval history, the War of the Roses thing. That's tale as old as time, right? There's a war and people want power. Yeah. And even though it was very intriguing. Once I figured out what the heck was happening, I was invested and I wanted to get to the end of the story, and I was curious, and it was intriguing, and the characters were good. And I was all in. But when I closed it, I was just like, I don't feel like he did anything special with this novel.
Very good. Anything else, Miss Dana?
Yeah, I don't know that I won't read I haven't immediately read the others, but got a lot of other reading going on. I might pick up more. We'll see. I like the big sweeping epic kind of. I'm so glad you came up with that word, Amber, because that's exactly the word. But I love the big sweeping epic kind of things, and I really want to know what happens with Jon Stark. I'm kind of like Annie, like if he's there, I kind of want to.
Yeah, I want to know more.
so yeah, I could see me.
Yeah,
something, another one of these books at some point, the next one, and might take me as long to read them as it has taken him to write them. But
maybe book 6 will be out by the time you get to the end.
Yeah, I'll be ready.
We can only hope, right? We can only hope. Yeah, I appreciate both your comments. I think it's fun that I wasn't. Go ahead.
I do want to say one more thing, and I am not an expert on Lord of the Rings, but I've read Lord of the Rings. I've read The Hobbit twice, and I've read something else Tolkien wrote, Letters to Father Christmas or whatever.
Okay.
They're not the same, and they're the same as far as you have two fantasy worlds. But Tolkien is all about truth and goodness and beauty and light. And Martin is an excellent writer. And even my oldest son, he said, Mom, sometimes the way Martin writes, it's literary. And he's right. Martin is an excellent writer. But I would never use those two in the same sentence to compare them ever. Because Martin is dark and dreary and violent and just bleh most of the time. That's my final thought.
That's
a very excellent final thought. I will disagree. I will agree to disagree on certain parts of it. I like your breakdown, but I think they're right. Because again, and your son brings up a very good point. Tolkien was also literary. He was also a wordsmith, and I feel like that's what we get. That's the comparisons I was going with George. Okay. Now, are they two? As far as the overall theme of their stories, they're miles and miles and miles apart. Mm-hmm. But I think they both bring excellent storytelling and excellent characters to the table, and that's the comparison that I can make between those two. That's where I disagree, but I agree on all the other things that where you're talking about the comparison part. But that's exactly what I went with. It's they both bring something different. You know, we can say what we want to about Herbert and Dune, or even in the movies with Lucas and Star Wars. We can say all we want about those, but it was years and years and years before we got George R. R. Martin from Tolkien. And for that was the thing that I at least I see. There's been many great fantasy writers, but I don't think what Tolkien did for it and what Martin has done since, I think, added to the fantasy. And we've already talked about the fantasy genre, but I think he still adds to the fantasy genre. It's just in a different light, the dark light, and I like that. So yeah. Woo. All right, let's get our final. Yeah, I'm glad. Well, I'm glad you did. Amber once told me, she's like, I never watched a show and I'm never going to read it. And I was like, I'm going to make you read it one of these days. So, well, let's get your final rating. So, Miss Dana, let's get your final rating of Game of Thrones.
It's really close to a 4. It's just not quite the 4. And I think it's just because I had issues with some of the storyline, but that's not the fault of the book. That's what the book is, but that kept it from being a solid 4 for me.
Very good. Miss Amber.
It is nowhere near a 4.
It's okay.
Okay, so I'm giving it a 3, but it is a rock bottom 3. Like, it's a 2.75893. All the problems that that I mentioned, what I didn't like, and you're right. The thing about Daenerys, it is what it is. Whatever, it's a personal thing. But the writing is good, and that's why it's not a 2. It really is well written, and the characters are engaging, and the storyline is interesting. It's not a 4 for me because of what I just said. I don't think he did anything special with this novel. So 3 stars.
And that means, ladies and gentlemen, I do not have to listen to 2 Taylor Swift albums at all. Woo!
Yes. If only the writing would have sucked.
I know. No, those are very fair assessments. And my very first rating on this, when I first read it, it was a 3 for the exact same reasons that you got. But as I grow and I read it more and I find the things that, you fall in love with it, and the things that I missed. And I do the same thing with Tolkien though. There's many things, as many times I've read Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, there's so many things that I've missed, and because something might have distracted me or whatever. And I love that each time I find something new but I can also see the opposite side for people. I can totally get why a lot of, because I said, I like to go read those negatives, and I can understand it. And it doesn't bother me that they give negative reviews on it, because I understand where they're coming from. I can understand that certain people have a dislike for the age limits, or they dislike all the brutality, and that they may have been tainted by the show at times. Because I guarantee a lot of people didn't read it, went and watched the shows, and then went back and read it, and they were tainted on the review of the book. But that doesn't make their reviews any less, because I can understand. But I gave it a 5 overall. And the reason I gave it a 5 this time, again, it was the little things that I missed. Like again, I was, as you guys did with your character sheets or your notes, I was like, I never picked up on the Lysa and the John or the Littlefinger, and it was this time around when I'm like, she talked about the kiss and how that, and I'm like, oh, it makes that scene from sixth season totally makes sense now. I don't know the exact season. Somebody's going to correct me on that somewhere down the road, but it makes sense. And that was little things that I missed. And like I said, the antler in the throat of I'm sitting there reading, and I'm like, and then I watched the first season again, right after, I was kind of reading and watching, which is shame on me. but I just to visualize. So I would read where I knew that the first episode. So I would read and then watch the first episode. I wanted to see some comparisons, and I was like, "Oh, that finally makes these things make sense." And it's those little things that bumped it up for me. It's always, for the longest time, it's been a 4. Probably for the last 10 to 15 years, it's been a 4. But this time, I bumped it up to a 5, and it's for the little things. And again, it's as I go through and now do my own writing, I appreciate and can only wish that I could be like him in certain ways of writing. I want Mike, you sit there like you talked about. I want those characters to jump off. I want my characters to jump. I want people to be like, "Oh, I love this person, and I never want them to go away." And so that I think I can appreciate it, and I'm hoping, yeah, I will. You will never see them again. No, but does that bother you? Does that we give it our ratings and everything, but does that bother you that he kills people off?
I think it's realistic. It's funny that we're talking about this because Eric finished that TV show American Primeval last night, and I guess
such a great show.
Killed off his favorite character, and he's out like he's a 3-year-old, and his lollipop got taken away. So it bothers Eric a lot. It is what it is.
Yeah. I'd like to hear what his rate, how he felt. I loved American Primeval, and I love it for different reasons than I loved 1883, and I think I pointed that out in my, where 1883 is probably more realistic in ways. But I did, and this is the one time I will say this is the one time I did appreciate the brutality of the actual wars that we do see, and I mean, it's one thing I appreciate about the return, or not the return, the Two Towers, that brutality, in the book of the Two Towers, the siege of Helm's Deep is 2 pages long, but in the movie, he gives us a beautiful enactment of what that war would have been like. And it was brutal. And sometimes I'm trying to talk to that with, even with Lorena, and sometimes it has to be brutal to come across. Thank you, Eric. 5 stars. Not as good as 1883 though. So we are spot on with each other. Appreciate
and
that,
Dash,
buddy.
I think that's interesting, and I wonder if you need to unpack that with your therapist for as many times you spent in the Middle East.
Like I said,
You just have a different perspective on war. I mean, than Dana and I do, for sure.
Clearly,
I do.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No, and that's fine. But I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get that. And it's sometimes why I can watch certain things, and sometimes I can't watch certain things. So. But it doesn't make it any less. But yeah, it was. Yeah, and I know exactly who you're upset about, Griffin or Eric. I know exactly who you're upset about, Eric, and I am too. So we're in the same boat. I did not know that war even existed until that show came out, and so that was.
Dana, have you seen the previews?
I love doing when you watch those shows and then you go back.
Mormons in Utah, Brigham
Yeah,
Young.
that's it.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah, Brigham Young and the open field massacre, or the something open field massacre. I wasn't aware of that, and it was good. Again, if you're out of the brutality, it's probably not the best for you. But if you do get a chance to go do some research on the actual battle, read some of the articles and papers written on it. It's very interesting, and I wasn't aware of that about the Mormons.
It's like where the U.S. went in and tried to make them get rid of polygamy. Yeah, I have read a little bit about that. Not
so much polygamy. I don't know if it was the polygamy part. I know that they were being very. The U.S. didn't like Brigham Young.
Okay.
For his way of thinking, I believe.
Okay.
That's where I kind of get lost in the whole the religion factor and the factor of that, but I think that was part of it, but I don't know if I don't think they brought that up a whole lot. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, the whole that whole relationship thing. But they were very brutal because they thought that was their land. You know, they left because they were feeling persecuted. They left to go to Utah,
Right.
and whatnot. But there's lots of great literature and articles on it if you ever get a chance to read it. I spent, again, that's what I do when I watch 1883. I'm reading articles on what Montana was like, and because I want to see how. Not that I think that Taylor Sheridan is not an excellent director and knows exactly what he's talking about, but you kind of want to see the historical accuracy of it. So I thought they did well, and
which you can do without blood and guts and like grossness. I mean, you can still have all of that. Because listen, really quick, and I know we're getting off topic a little bit, but one of my favorite shows ever is Justified and Hell on Wheels. Hell on Wheels takes place when they're doing the train from east to west. It's after the Civil War. It was a violent time. It's cowboys and Indians. But the blood and gore back in the early mid 2000s, or when was it, Eric? It was when we lived in Germany. So 2012, 2013. The blood and gore in shows then, 10 years later now, it's just so much and so much more. And Hell on Wheels told a fairly historically accurate show and showed the brutality without all of the crap that they're putting in there today. So that is my problem, is you can still show that and it not be as terribly bloody as it is.
No, I agree with that. That's why I think 1883 is still the superior show. I do. I enjoyed American Primeval before it was, but 1883 is still the probably the superior show in reflecting the times. And Hell on Wheels was an excellent show, and so was Deadwood for what Deadwood was. So I enjoyed those, but again, I'm a Western guy. I love Westerns, and so those types of shows. But I enjoyed the brutality I enjoyed it because it gave it a different perspective, if that makes any sense.
Sure, I'm just going to chalk it up to you, dude.
Dude.
Okay, what are we reading in February?
Oh, mercy. All right, well, we are reading Stephen King, 11/22/63 by Stephen King. It's all about the JFK assassination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's another long one. I'm sorry.
Another epic. No, we're good. It's another epic. No,
I'm only 5. I'm on my Kindle. I'm reading on my Kindle, and I'm only 5% in. But Dana, all the other big books we're reading, I have finished except for Bleak House.
That's like 100. That's like 150, 200 pages.
What?
5%'s 150 pages.
I said that's like 150, 200 pages. 5%.
I know. I can't tell on a Kindle. I just know I have to get to 100% very soon.
I will
be fine. I'm almost done with all the other. The only other big book I have is Charles Dickens, and I'm on audio on that one for most of it, so I'm okay.
And the audio for 11/22/63 is actually very good too.
Okay.
So if you end up switching over, it is really good.
Well, I have to do both. It's just how I get through them faster.
Let me ask. We talked a little bit about this because I sent you that picture because obviously Dana got us started on it with Stephen King, and then I sent you that picture of all these Stephen King books that were out there, and I'm going to do this challenge. What is a challenge that I know you have like you have your Presidents still, and you have your Charles Dickens. What's another challenge that you would like to throw at yourself this year?
Oh, so I have a gazillion, but one that I'm really doing is I have some authors, Fiona Davis and Sophie Kinsella, and I can't think of the other one off the top of my head, that I am, over time, they've written novels that I just haven't read. So I'm working on the backlist of some authors that I used to read all the time and just I've missed out on. So there's only like 3 or 4 novels for each author that I've missed. So I'm going to make it a point this year to go back and read those.
Cool.
What about you, Miss Dana? Any new challenges you would like to try even this year or maybe in the future?
This is the year I'm reading War and Peace. It's been staring at me for a long time. And I've just been putting it off because it seemed really intimidating. And I I mean, I'm not very far into it yet. I'm trying to read a chapter a day. And so I'm only on like chapter 26 or 27, something like that. But so far, it's not what I expected either. I don't know why. I don't know why I had certain ideas about this book.
Because you're at the peace part.
Maybe that's it. Maybe the war part is coming, and that's gonna.
I love War and Peace.
This is what I thought this was about.
Yeah, I love War and Peace, and I'm reading it with you too. And listen, everybody out there, if you want to read War and Peace, there's like 366 chapters. Read one chapter a day, you'll have it done in a year, just fine.
And a lot of the chapters are 2 or 3 pages each.
Yes,
like they're really short. And I think the longest chapter I've read so far was like 9 pages. Mm-hmm. So it's really very doable. So this is the year.
But how many words are in those chapters?
I don't know, but I think Goodreads actually does a word count.
Oh wow!
No, they do a page count. They do a page.
They do a page count.
Which I'm going to be a gazillion bajillion with all these books everybody's making me read.
All the long books.
That's all.
All the long books in 2025.
I'm going to catch up on the Stephen King's ones that because Amber and I have read quite a few in the last couple of years, Stephen King. So I'm going to try to finish up the ones that I haven't read. There were some I didn't even know he had written. So that's cool. And then I'm going to this is the geek in me. I'm going to read the entire Star Wars, but I'm going to read it in chronological order. Oh. So that might take me a couple of years, but I'm going to read. This is all I'm talking. Even the ones that they say are not canon. I'm going to read all of those in chronological order. So I got my first one in today. The very first chronological book. I got it today. So I'll start that one here soon. Ooh. So that's my goals. Now, will I get them? Who knows? So I need you to cheer me on and cheer on the ladies as they hit their goals with War and Peace. I want you guys to mark these dates down. If you're watching and whoever else is watching, mark these dates down. January 28th, pre-order for Hell Comes to Texas, a Colt Windsor adventure. Well, the pre-order will be up, and the 28th of February is when it actually will drop and be up for sale. So the pre-orders will be done by then.
That's awesome.
Yay, so that's awesome.
Congratulations. That's really great.
And I have never been so nervous in my entire I have been in wars. I have been in, you name it. I've been there. I've done it. I have never been so nervous in my entire life.
So Dana, let's see, it comes out February 28th. So probably in April, when we do our March reading roundup, there might be a book on there called Hell Comes to Texas.
You guys might have to do that show without me because I am so afraid. Yeah, we got it on Amazon. I'm still working with Barnes and Noble to get it up on Barnes and Noble as well. So there'll be 2 different and then it will be an ebook and I am currently working with some people where I might be able to get it as a audio. But that's going to
nice.
That's going to cost me a little bit of money. So we're doing some talks. I am working with some great guys. The guy just did a review on his book on Goodreads, The Veil Machine. I'm working with him and some things like that. So and a friend of his, and we're working on doing some advertisement, I guess, and some promotions and things like that. So hopefully this will go well. If not, then it's
gonna be fine, buddy. Yes. It's gonna be fine.
So you're gonna post the link for the pre-order, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll post a link on Tuesday when the pre-order drops, and then when the actual book drops again, I will drop the drop dead date. But just trying to. This may sound bad, but I'm trying to garner interest.
Sure.
From the pre-orders, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's what they're about.
Yeah. That's what so I'm trying to garner some interest and see where it goes. Yeah. But word of mouth works just as well. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yep.
And if you guys see me crying, within the next 2 weeks, you'll know why.
I'm sorry.
I might have shed a few tears over this. Do you ever just
It's
get
your baby.
you're just like, but I have done all the editing myself, and I've done all the Miss Dana, we'll talk about 2 pennies or 2 cents a word on the next book, though. So if you add that up, 2 cents a word with about a 60,000 word book, we'll have a discussion.
Chunk of change.
Yeah, it's a good chunk of change. So we'll talk. So the editing may not be as perfect as a lot. But that's enough of me patting myself on the back. All right, we'll be back February for January roundup. We'll have 11/22/63, Miss Dana's Choice, and then March will be we're talking about some March being middle school reading month. Is that correct? Is that what
Middle
it is?
grade March.
I think we should just make it so we call it. I think we'll make it just a whole entire middle grade show. If that's what you're talking about, I think that's what you chose for.
It's a one-off show.
So I think
we talk. Each of us pick 5 of our favorite middle grade novels, and hopefully they're all different, and talk about them. And then my pick for March is a middle grade book. So
we'll have 3 shows again next month, for March. February we only have 2. March we have 3 shows, so that'll be excellent to talk about. I like middle school books. I just got done reading quite a few of them, and we still need to have a discussion because I'm still not quite sold on where middle school stops and ends, or starts
just
and ends.
do like a 4th grade through 8th grade, but
that I can handle.
The age is 8 to 12, but there's always wiggle room. I would not something that maybe a high schooler would think is too young for them or something, I guess.
Right.
Harry Potter is not a middle school book.
I think the first 3 are. I think the first 3 Harry Potters are middle grade books, and then I think they turn into YA. That's my own opinion.
Okay.
Most of my middle schoolers in my classes had read at least the first 2 Harry Potter.
All right. Well, then shame on me for no. I'm kidding. No, I was just curious. It does help me narrow down my picks because I do know that some they say middle grade, but
Beverly Cleary is on the young end of middle school, and then I would put the first 3 Harry Potters towards the older end. But then you have like the Pinderwicks and it's not. It's kind of broad, but really
Encyclopedia Brown.
Teenagers yet? What?
Encyclopedia Brown.
I think that's like the younger end of it. Yeah.
Don't make fun of me. Encyclopedia Brown's one of my favorite. So is the Hardy Boys.
That I would make. Well, I don't know.
Hey, the girls have read Nancy Drew already.
See, why? She's a No, I started reading Nancy Drew at 10.
Yes, I was young.
They love reading. They love reading. They love reading.
I know, but there's a difference in knowing how to read it and then comprehending and understanding. But you're their dad. God gave you those girls to raise, not me. So
listen, I have had enough of Cat Kid and Dog Man. No, I'm kidding. Speaking of Dog Man, we're gonna go see the Dog Man movie this weekend. So, all right. Well, we'll be back next month. Thank you, ladies, for your wonderful time with A Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it was fun.
As always, you guys make this show fun.
Hi. She's ready for you to get off.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, all right. We'll see you guys next month.
Bye.
Night, everybody.
Bye.